To join you all on stage. Very excited to discuss some of the innovative approaches and practices in food production, policy, and of course, consumer behavior to be able to help us drive sustainable change in the US and American food systems more generally. Let's start the discussion very high level, general broad note. How can the US reconcile this seemingly large trade-off between our growing demand for food and, of course, the need for environmental stewardship? And I'd like to turn it to the panel, and starting with maybe Caitlin. What are some of those innovative solutions that you're seeing that are developed in America to address this balance?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'm so thrilled to see agriculture on the main stage. When we're talking about climate solutions, agriculture, of course, accounting for roughly a third of all greenhouse gas emissions. But my work at Whole Foods has certainly reinforced my fervent belief that food and agriculture, how things are grown and raised and produced, can certainly be a force for good. The current state of agriculture, I think we all know, has its challenges. Like I said, a lot of greenhouse gas emissions as things are conventionally raised currently. Only about 1% of all land use in the US and farmland use is for agriculture, significantly less for regenerative at the moment. Let's talk about the average age of a farmer, 58. If we're talking about cattle ranchers, that's well into the 60s. So business as usual in agriculture, and this isn't even talking about the food waste, we know significant food waste within agriculture, is a challenge right now. And I think we are at a real inflection point. But what's really brilliant about agriculture as compared to some of the other sectors is that while other industries have the opportunity to reduce climate impact, agriculture actually has the opportunity to not just reduce, but improve and enhance. And not just in terms of carbon abatement. Let's not get carbon tunnel vision here. We have a major opportunity within agriculture to enhance biodiversity, uplift human rights. It really, to me, is an incredible opportunity to have a win-win solution as it relates to climate. And again, I want to underscore the intersectionality of agricultural solutions. So as we shift to more climate supportive or climate smart agriculture, and we'll talk about maybe some of the challenges to doing that, but let's say that is part of a major part of the solution here. Again, I want to underscore that it's not just a proven environmental solution, but also the opportunity on the social and humanitarian crisis as well.
That's a great point. I think we definitely want to be able to talk about environment, social, human, economic, all of those factors.
Absolutely.
Eric, we talked about greenhouse gas emissions, and I have to be able to turn it over to you as well and talk a little bit about the meat industry and just hearing a little bit about how it's contributing to some of these challenges, but also some of the innovative solutions there. Yeah,
absolutely. So with the Meat Institute, we work with meat companies, 95% of the red meat in the US, majority of the poultry as well. It's a wide range of types of companies, from the very largest, some of whom are here at this event, to many, many small companies, less than 300 employees. And we see an opportunity to be very collaborative in working together to address solutions at an industry level. We've launched what we've called the Protein Pact for the people, animals, and climate of tomorrow to take an industry-wide collaborative approach that not only works with our members to enhance best practices across the industry, making sustainability a non-competitive issue across the industry so that we're able to share best practices, collect data from our members as a whole so that we have industry aggregates so we can measure progress over time, and ultimately work towards goals that we have to help our members and the industry as a whole to measure and reduce their emissions over time. This isn't just done with the meat companies, it's also done with partners on the farm. And so the way sustainability has really evolved within the meat sector is that you have individual species efforts in beef and pork and poultry and dairy and feed that have all evolved on their own. Because as an association, we really bring all those together in one umbrella, we see ourselves as an opportunity to really tie those together from a sustainability perspective as well. And so we are partnered with all of those groups to try to unite the sustainability work, ideally make data accessible throughout the supply chain and help the data flow, and ultimately connect it into retailers and restaurants who are also doing this work, including with folks like Whole Foods and Walmart, to ensure that we are meeting their demands, meeting consumer demands, and showing that progress over time.
Yeah, that's a great point on data. I think we can only manage what we measure, so we definitely have to share data. And obviously, protein is a big macronutrient that we need to be consuming for healthy diets. I do want to turn it over to some of the consumer-facing or nutrition specialists, if we could call it that. Would any of you gentlemen, Ilan or Daniel, want to share something about the consumer perspective on innovative solutions?
If I may, first of all, thank you for this panel. I will be reclusive to say that talking about food before lunch, I think that it's very well connected right now. I come from a community, we serve 500,000 patients from LA County to Orange County, and creating innovation and looking at the face of the final consumer, and especially with absolutely everything that we have learned during COVID-19, that thanks to actually different companies, we continue to move. We didn't have a lot of toilet papers, but food was not an issue, right? Mm-hmm. Then reflecting on that part and using these type of forums to make sure that it's sustainable and also effective on giving the things that we have. We have done a lot of public health efforts to make sure that we're moving, against thyroid problems with iodine. We have talked about folic acid right now regarding a lot of other neurological stuff that we can actually prevent. We have added fluoride to the water. Then figuring out how can we do this and also add the public health aspect of it. And I think that it's something achievable. I think that it's something that if we add the human design from the concept of creating the new generation of sustainable agriculture and putting all these efforts, we can do something different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really like this panel because I think that the most relevant perspectives are kind of here, right? So from the production side, we still need to keep in mind that there is a Malthusian trap that in the 20th century we were able to escape, right? Mm-hmm. So that focus on efficiency is very important. Then we have on the consumer side, right? And I think that Whole Foods basically kind of represents this modern consumer that with new values about the quality of the product, where it comes from, right? And what's the impact. And we should have nutrition and health in mind, because I think that food is really the most important form of energy. Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about sustainability or sustainable transition for this, which is the most important form of energy, we should also take into account the transition for sustainable energy, like in the kilowatt hours, right? Joules. But we don't have that clarity about that. How does that look like? And I think that we have had some false starts. I'm just so happy that there is no cultivated meat representative here, because I think that we need to be aware of the economic feasibility of all of this, right? And if you're having a $3,000 an ounce product, that's not a real start. So in my case, what we do is that we farm sustainable shrimp close to cities. So from a fundamentals economic point of view, I think that is a great opportunity for farming in the United States, because where I come from, which is Mexico, and I was trained as an economist, we industrialized our country by substituting imports. So bringing a new form of energy that makes sense for farmers, that it's a profitable option for farmers, that is healthy because we don't use antibiotics, we don't use chemicals, and that is aligned with consumers. And people have underestimated how much people like shrimp, right? Like red lobster. And I think that's very important from a very kind of fundamentals economics point of view.
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting, and obviously, yeah, cultured meat and other things are very much part of the discussion as well. And then a lot of conversation around policy and regulation on that. So I'd like to kind of switch to just a little bit more of that level, the policy level. Can we talk a little bit about, from an agriculture farming perspective, conventional farming practices have been subsidized heavily in the US. What would we need from a policy angle to move that to more sustainable sort of practices? And then also on the nutrition angle and then macronutrients and others, what do we need to be able to educate consumers from that policy angle to be able to make that shift more sustainable?
Yeah, I can give it a start. Let's chat Farm Bill. I think the Farm Bill, how many of you are familiar with the Farm Bill? I need more of you to be familiar with the Farm Bill. Let's call it the Farm and Food Bill, because that's really what it is. So please, if it's one committed action you have coming out of here, research it quickly. A quick Google will reveal a lot. But this is an essential piece of policy to shifting exactly what you talked about. The shift towards climate smart agriculture really starts with some of the economics. As was explained, it can be a barrier to entry. Technical assistance can also be a barrier to entry. We need to invest in our young farmers. With the National Young Farmer Coalition, we do just that at Whole Foods. But we really need a policy shift within the Farm Bill to allow the support of more climate smart agriculture and that shift to take place. So yeah, I'll pause there. I'm sure others have thoughts on policy as well.
I mean, I think I would add to that. We've seen the climate smart ag work beginning, and the research and the science that really underpins that is really critical for the industry to be able to identify what are the best practices, what are the technologies that make the most sense, how can we make them affordable and adoptable by farmers, so that it fits into their businesses and make sure that they're being paid appropriately for the things that they need to adopt on the farm. So the more that we can enable that through policy, that will help make it more successful.
And by the way, sometimes we hear policy and we get like this hole in our stomach and we feel pain and we're starting to think about dollars and cents. But on reality, one of the things that I bring from our community is that at the moment that we do sensible things, it's possible to change the life of our community. And I'm going to give you an example. You have all been to a doctor, and at the end of the doctor conversation, you always hear, eat your fruits and vegetables, eat your protein, right? But the reality of a lot of my patients is that the moment that they go to, to actually choose, and it has been hard times right now, they need to choose between the things that they know that they're green, nice, and actually can make a difference, or fight hunger. Then a lot of these policies need to be aligned with the realities of our community. And I'm coming from Mexico City, working in LA, in Los Angeles, then this actually applies to Mumbai. This applies to middle of Tajikistan. We have multiple things. Then making sure that we, and looking at this amazing diverse population, figure out what can we add that it's not going to be a headache, it's not going to cause us gastritis when we're actually creating that policy, but actually giving the feedback on what's happening on the community and making sure that we're part of that. Because a lot of the amazing policymakers that we have in government, they are experts on moving things, but we are the real key holders on creating this communication of we know what we need, and they know how to push it. And merging both are very important, from agricultural to actually the community that we're living in.
Yeah, Tana, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I also come from Mexico, so from an external point of view, it's very interesting to see the farm system in the United States, which is very, very efficient, right? As you compare it to other countries. So, and I think that this conversation about policy, it's like updating their values, right? So this very efficient in terms of getting food production with a new set of values is very important. But I think that this is also key, because food is also what unites us also economically, locally, right? Because otherwise, if our dream for a sustainable food future is like relying on a couple of companies that are producing food somewhere, which according to, I don't know which standards, it's a problem. Yeah. Because I think it's a great opportunity to start with new openings with new products like shrimp here, to revitalize farmers' profitability, but also its interaction with the local community. And I think that also regenerative agriculture is mostly local, right? So I love that concept.
Which is actually a good point. Sorry, I know, Eric, there's a question here, which is the USDA inspection process is set up to serve industrial meat production. How can we help small regenerative local farms in a heavily regulated food system? ties in a lot. I'm sure everyone has comments, but do you want to?
I would challenge that premise that it's solely set up to serve industrial meat production. USDA inspection is a regulatory requirement. There are many plants that are very small that have USDA meat inspection. As I mentioned, we have 350 members. Majority have under 300 employees. They're all federally inspected establishments, and so that is available to any size establishment that is looking to sell federally. I think the USDA, the federal government, has invested in smaller facilities as well, and provided infrastructure investments to be able to have more diverse array of sizes of plants. But I also kind of want to latch on to some of the previous comments. Efficiency is important and a really good thing. We need to maintain efficiency while also maintaining and improving sustainability. Efficiency allows us to feed people affordably, maintain food security, and so we're working to try to make efficiency a key part of sustainability while also improving our impacts on land and climate as a whole. And so I want to make sure that that's a key part of the discussion as well.
Yeah, I think that
I just want to add too, efficiency and efficacy are two different things, right? And so I so appreciate your observation, and I don't disagree with your comment, though I think we should challenge ourselves to consider for whom is the food system working currently, and what shifts need to make place to ensure continued efficiency, although I would argue there's a tremendous amount of waste as it currently stands. We know that there are both environmental and humanitarian crises as a result of the current state of agriculture. So while super efficient in a handful of commodities, and let me just be clear, farming is the hardest of jobs. And so in no way am I saying that these farmers are bad people doing bad things. That is not the case. But what we're saying is policy is a tool to help ensure that efficiency and effectiveness within our supply system can help, right? It's an uphill battle currently. And we need to help every single farmer in this transition. This fallacy of status quo for agriculture right now, I mean, it's going to continue to be a challenge. Not only does the climate impact agriculture adversely, but agriculture impacts the climate, right? So we're just going to continually reinforce until we can switch that lever on policy.
Yeah, that's a good point on it is a self-reinforcing cycle in a way. And also being able to define what we mean when we say efficiency, efficacy, and for good, basically. Agriculture and food for good. Can we say it's environmentally helpful, it's economically sustainable, because otherwise there's no way to be able to grow food, and then also has social implications.
Absolutely.
Daniel, I noticed you want to chime in, so.
Yes, because I think that this is, I love this perspective, because if you consider efficiency without considering the externalities, the externalities on the environment, on health, then you can have a very limited view of efficiency, right? But if you, with technology, because I remember when regenerative agriculture was not taken seriously, but now there are experiences with profitable transition to regenerative agriculture with its challenges for the first 3 years. But then we can add, for instance, new animal protein products to add on that profitability for the first 3 years, right? And for instance, what we're doing is that we are making the production of shrimp, of local shrimp, very efficient, internalizing all the, for instance, we don't have any wastewater, zero wastewater. And we're probably the only animal protein that can say that, right? So, but also, and we basically replicated the ocean in our tanks in order to do that. So we take, and we base our microbial communities that are recycling nitrogen. So we take those microbes and then we process them in order to make a biofertilizer that can be applied to regenerative agriculture. So my point is that with technology and this holistic approach about efficiency and externalities, I think with that we can update policy, but also consumer education.
Yeah, that's a great point about being able to think about byproducts and other benefits that not only impact you in your silo, but also other sectors that are kind of hoping to achieve the same goals. That's a great point. There is a question which I want to address first. What percentage of the meat suppliers supported by the Meat Institute produce meat alternatives that are vegan or cultivated? And I'm sure maybe
I don't know the exact percentage on that, but we do have cultivated meat companies that are members of the Meat Institute. Those who have gained USDA inspection are able to be our members, and they currently are. We have members who have invested specifically in cultivated and plant-based meat, and so yeah, I mean that is a part of our membership, and we very much view the alternatives as an and not an or, and it is absolutely the case that we're going to need all of those different products and technologies to be able to feed a growing population. We cannot sustainably feed the number of people that we're going to have around the world simply with just meat. That will not be possible. And so we can make meat more sustainable and maintain production that we're doing in a very sustainable way, while also incorporating those products as well and making them available globally.
Yeah, I think it's an important point that it's not an and, it's not an or, it's an and. Yeah,
I want to reinforce that too. It's such a brilliant point, and I think we collectively have an opportunity to recognize that in the ag space.
Yeah.
How many a conference have I been at when the organic folks are arguing with the regenerative folks about which one is better? It's an and. It has to be an and. Again, less than 1% or 1% organic, less than that regenerative at the time. So we need both. We need all. We need biodynamic. We need, we really need to lean in as an industry into the ands in this moment. It's going to take all the tools in the toolbox to help move the needle towards that ideal state I talked about, where agriculture is actively enhancing biodiversity, sequestering carbon, uplifting human rights. And so we really need to lean into the and the intersectionality of agriculture.
And I would challenge everybody here, particularly I think within agriculture, but I think within our society today, we become very polarized, and it just becomes an either or. With meat, eat meat, go vegan, and there's no in between. Like we all live in the in between, and so I think the more that we can look at it not as a black and white, but that there's solutions that incorporate everything, the better. Kind of adding on to Caitlin's point.
And lastly, I will actually add the spice and lemon over here. One of the most important thing about this is that we're realistic. We need to actually have all this stuff, but are we adding the chemicals that we need to add, right? Are we making it sustainable and also nutritional available for the communities that we want to serve around the world? Are they culturally effective? Are they part of the diet that we want to perceive with that part? Then yes, we need everything, and we need to make sure that when we're designing these type of things, that we're taking into account, apart of the nutritional part of it, adding whatever we need to add, and most importantly, if there's extra stuff over there, maybe thinking of taking it out, because a lot of the things that we have seen, especially after COVID-19, is that a lot of the communities are eating a lot of very processed food, ultra-processed food. The outcomes are not positive, right? We know high blood pressure, diabetes, and other stuff. Then making sure that when we're having this conversation, also including the part of what's the end goal. It's not just feeding them to take away hunger, but also to be healthy and using food as medicine.
That's actually a really good segue to the next question, and I think this will probably be the last one. There's one more on the screen, but you spoke of vulnerable populations in the community. I think a lot of what we've talked about today is also long-term, or at least we need to set it in place now so that we can achieve some of those goals in the next few years. But as we're thinking about food insecurity and inequity in the US, there are so many food deserts, right? Vulnerable communities, populations. What are some of the things that we need to do immediately, short-term actions that we need to take today that can help us overcome some of those challenges?
One of the most important things is that we need to collaborate. It's not the government, it's not the private sector, it's not the community, it's not the nutritional part, it's not the growers, it's not we're all living here. Mm-hmm. We're consuming the same oxygen, and we will continue to use it. And making sure that we're creating these type of spaces where we are actually uniting different voices with different problems and making sure that we're taking into account the community that we want to serve. Then a lot of, and I have seen the zero waste to make sure that we're repurposing a lot of the food that we have in different trends and markets, making sure that at the moment that we're designing, the product, making sure that, is it sustainable? Is it going to go there? And also, is the price point realistic for the population that we want to serve? right now, the FDA and actually in California, we're trying to put folic acid inside of tortillas. And that's a huge, amazing thing. It doesn't change the flavor that much. It's a couple of micrograms over there, and it can actually save a lot of kids to have problems with neurological problems before they are actually born. Then making sure that we're creating this type of conversations and uniting the voice for this from the point of creation to the point of actually giving it back to the community to make sure that they're there.
Yeah, go ahead.
One of our goals is to fill the protein gap for hungry Americans. It's currently about 500 million pounds, looking at data from USDA and Feeding America. And largely the protein is available. We see that it is out there, but the infrastructure doesn't necessarily exist to make it available to hungry people and people facing food insecurity. We're very actively working with Feeding America and other partners to help invest in the infrastructure to allow food banks to be able to cut down larger pieces of meat into smaller portions for consumer sizes. And so that's a big priority of ours, to make it more accessible to people who are hungry and facing food insecurity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll underscore a couple of those thoughts. I mean, I think it's easy as a retailer to tout our millions of pounds of food donated, equating to millions of meals. And I will do that. It's out in our impact report in July. Definitely read it. However, I think the more important point, particularly with this audience, is collective action. Mm-hmm. And you spoke to it. I am really passionate about this topic. If you look at our top 100 suppliers, it's going to mirror a lot of other retailers' top 100 suppliers. Certainly, we have over 41,000 organic suppliers, but the largest suppliers that we have represent the vast majority of our carbon impact. And so in light of knowing that we need more efficiency and effectiveness, how can we collectively act to move the needle on some of these key things? We ought not be having slightly separate conversations with the same suppliers about how to decarbonize. And we certainly hope we're not asking them to do it slightly different ways, right? Talk about inefficient. And so we have a pre-competitive obligation, in my opinion, to come together as a sector more effectively to help move the needle on these key issues. Wouldn't it be great if climate change or climate impact were not a brand differentiation, but certainly just the ticket to entry?
Yeah, I think it's excellent. I notice we're at time, but I think what a note to end on, right? Collective action and collaboration across the food and agricultural value chain. I think that's critical, something we're doing at Impact, and also just being able to make the space to have conversations like this with different stakeholders across the value chain. So thank you so much, Caitlin, Ilan, Daniel, and Eric. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And also thank you to our audience. I know we're at lunch, so please feel free to make your way out to the lunch. And then we do have a private lunch as well. So for folks who've signed up for that, please feel free to ask our team and they will direct you. So thank you.
Thank you.